Thank you for being here. We know that time is a renewable resource, and we appreciate you being here. I'm your host today. I'm steering the ship. My name is Brent Whitaker, and I am one of the coaches here at Business on Purpose. Can we all just stack hands on the fact that our culture, if we're talking about culture today, Western culture is moving at the speed of light. We are busy. We are checklist checking, harried people if we're not careful. And we all desire more peace and more purpose in our lives. If we're being vulnerable, we know change needs to happen. Can we take 30 minutes and be dialed in? That's the question. Can we take 30 minutes and be dialed in? Because what I'm about to unpack is principle based. It's not my idea. So you can trust that it's principle based. And so let's challenge ourselves to silence the pings, the dings, and the rings that are constantly vying for our attention to be present. And again, thanks again for taking the time to lean in. First, culture. What do I want to call? And if the Mendelsons are on here, I'm not sure if y'all are at our team day. So you're going to hear a lot of the same things about culture that we talked about that day, because again, it's principle based. I would love for y'all to spearhead some of the chat. What have you implemented? What have you eliminated? What were some of your takeaways from that day? So what I want to call today during our time together is that culture has tremendous impact and has a profound ability to really transform workplace and home environments. Also, let's stack hands up front that none of what I'm about to say really matters unless we do the work. Quite frankly, I'm going to unpack why culture matters kind of at a macro level. You will have to really bring clarity around why it matters to you. Then the how to can happen once you determine that why culture matters to you. If we make the time, if we put it on our calendar, we have a buddy to do this with. Think gym buddy, swim buddy, an accountability partner to hold us accountable and encourage you. Things will move in the right direction. So here is what culture actually does. So if you're a note taker, this is the time to take down some notes. Here you go. Culture literally saves lives. It makes us happier and healthier. That's number two. So number three, it changes families. It changes organizations. And it has, if we have time, it has long-lasting impact. And I'm talking about thousands of years type impact. So I'm going to repeat those. It literally saves lives. It makes us happier and healthier. Anybody want to be happier and healthier? It changes families. It changes organizations. And it has long-lasting impact. Then out of that belief, that knowing that I want to cause, you would define and refine your culture at work and at home. Because as we say consistently, work and life necessarily intersect. They are integrated. Here is where you can share in the chat so we can all get better together. So this is where it's active. Let's get some crowd participation going. When I say culture, what is your immediate reaction? Buzzwords that come to mind, good or bad. What organizations, think corporations, think sports teams, whatever. What organizations come to mind, good or bad, and why? Throw those in the chat. Jesse will interact with you there. But when I say culture, what comes to mind? So I'm going to give you an example. I'm from South Carolina. You are either a Gamecock or a Clemson Tiger. I'm a Clemson football fan. I have mentored kids that have played for Clemson. Clemson football, for example, they're recruiting these coaches. I've talked to some folks in the organization. These coaches at Clemson follow these high school kids that are being recruited on social media. Clemson particularly has said no to many five-star athletes because they were not a culture fit. Well, how did they know they weren't a culture fit? Because Dabo, the head coach, has defined and built a culture at Clemson. Here's what that culture does. It keeps coaches around. Do you want to keep employees around? Culture keeps coaches around longer, brings in the type of kids he wants, and he is doing it against a culture today that says, hey, bring any and every kid in as long as they're a five-star, regardless of character, promise them big NIL money. He promises them an education and development of character. That's what he does. The stories of kids that played for him that are now pro and how Dabo is still investing in their lives is amazing. Like I told you, I have coached some of these kids in high school that have gone on to play for Dabo. And they say he is who he says he is. And guess what? He's won 2 national championships doing it counter culturally. If you're anything like me, and I've worked for several great organizations, I had a misconception of what culture actually was. To understand what culture is, we must hear this. We must identify what preloaded assumptions we bring to the table. We must identify what preloaded assumptions we bring to the table. So I don't know if y'all remember the movie. Let me, my buddy Vince Vaughn, show us what I thought culture actually was before I got to Business on Purpose. So you remember the intern, right? It's him, Vince Vaughn, and I'm just drawing Owen Wilson. And they go to Google, and there's folks on bikes, there's games going on, there's volleyball, there's personalized everything, you name it. It was a big party. Okay. And guess what? That's what I thought culture was. And think about if that's what culture is, one big party of constant entertainment. I feel like if you can picture Maximus in Gladiator, he's going, are you not entertained constantly? And the owner of a small business is constantly looking around. Are you not entertained? That's not what culture is. It's not beanbags. It's not beer taps at work. It's not espresso machines. It's not bring your cat to work and scooter rides in the parking lot. That's entertainment. That's not a bad thing. It's just not culture. So what is culture? Culture is actually a biological term. It's from the Latin word colere, to tend, cultivate, and to grow. That word is broken down from the word cola, to worship or to revolve around. So my wife, Lee, we love to garden. Nerd alert, we do love to garden. And a garden is a culture in and of itself. We control the environment that produces a culture. We control the inputs, where the plant needs to be planted so it gets the right amount of sunlight, how much water, what kind of fertilizer, when do we prune it? We control and we get to cultivate the culture of our backyard that we want. I'm into longevity, I'm into health. I was reading Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia. If you're into wellness and health and longevity, it's a must read. Why am I reading it? Well, here's my family. Here's my why. Here's a picture of my wife and my girls. Okay, my girl, she's 2. I'll be 48 in January. So longevity is of high value to me. And we want to have another little curtain climber here soon. So I want to have a health span that equals my lifespan. So that being said, I'm reading this book about longevity. And what struck me was this impact of culture and the impact that it's had on the science community. It highlighted an eye-opening perspective, and culture has tremendous impact. Remember when I went back and said that it keeps us alive? Well, the story is this doctor and a team of scientists years ago go to the most remote inhabited place on Earth, Easter Island, think Stonehenge. And during their time there, this one scientist scoops up this clump of dirt. He takes it back, he puts it under the microscope. And from that culture, they developed the drug rapamycin. What's rapamycin? Well, if you were an organ recipient, if you were getting an organ transplant, rapamycin kept your body from rejecting that transplant. Rapamycin literally saves lives, and it came from a culture on Easter Island. Now, if you go to today, that same culture, that same drug is now a leading kind of drug they're studying that impacts longevity at a cellular DNA level. So literally culture helps save lives. That's the first thing that I told you I wanted to cause this belief in. And culture, I'll say this over and over, has impact. I told you it changes and cultivates families. The founder of Business on Purpose, Scott B, is a shining example of how intentional cultivation of culture at home has a transformative effect on family. You see, one of the core values, the BB's core values, is time around the table, cultivation of togetherness, and a culture that involves intentional family relationships. This core value of time around the table, it acts as a guardrail. as a filter in how they make decisions, what ideas, activities they need to say yes to, and what activities they need to say no to in order to live out that core value of to keep cultivating the culture they defined that they said they wanted, which begs the question, what do you want? What do you really want at home and at work? I saw how it literally lived out at Braden's wedding, their daughter. They actually, the time around the table, core value, you should have seen how the tables were set at the wedding so that people had time to interact. And there was this togetherness for conversations, for fellowship, for intentional conversations and memories were made. It was one of the best dinners I've ever been to in numerous weddings that I've attended over the years. Intentional cultivation and implementation of culture because it matters. I hope we're starting to see and grasp the magnitude and transformational ability of culture. Culture has impact. I said earlier that I wanted to cause a belief that it makes you healthier and happier. How does culture make you healthier and happier? Enter the Harvard study of adult development. What the study has found, lean in here if you've kind of tuned out, is that the healthiest and happiest people, based on 85 years of ongoing research with a large sample size by Harvard, really good. It's a really good opportunity to lean in and write these down. These two key factors down for healthy and happy longevity. What the study revealed, it has to do with relationships. Well, I thought we were talking about culture. We are. Culture deals with people. This ongoing study deals with people, and the findings point to relationships, which involve people. You see where I'm going. The healthiest and happiest people have strong relationships, and they even narrowed it down to these two factors to how to actually have strong relationships. Write these down. Showing interest in and being attentive to the people in your life. Showing interest in and being attentive to the people in your life will lead to more health and more happiness throughout your life. So back to the connection, culture focuses on people. It's highly relational. I referenced in the beginning that I wanted to cause the belief that it changes organizations. Here's a real life example coming at you. We have a culture calendar. We review it every Tuesday at a.m. at our team meeting. Our culture calendar helps us be intentional on the cultivation of culture we said we wanted to create. On the culture calendar, we actually put our vacations. We put our vacations on our culture calendar and we review them every meeting, every 8 o'clock morning on Tuesday morning, we review our culture calendar. Enter Saluda, the story. Here we go. Lee and I, this past February, got to take a weekend just by ourselves. We have a 2-year-old daughter. My mom comes down to watch baby girl. We go up to the mountains. Now, remember, we had just reviewed our culture calendar, right? We had just reviewed that I would be out of town. I didn't like putting my vacation on the culture calendar until this actually happened. So Saturday night in Saluda, North Carolina, we're heading down to dinner, heading down from the mountains to dinner. We get a text from Scott and Ashley Beebe. And it said, hey, we value marriage. And we are so grateful that you are taking the time to work on your marriage. This is the actual text from them. I had my wife pull it back up. So they said, here's your in Venmo, check it out. There was $50 for dessert and cocktails on them because they knew that we were there, and part of their culture was showing interest in their people and being attentive to their people. That $50 has gone a long way. I will forever talk about that $50 investment in one of their teammates. So here's the deal. That $50 was worth its weight in gold 10 times over. What kind of impact on your team would an act like that, an intentional act of showing interest in and being attentive to one of your employees? What would that do culturally? What would it do for that person? So again, BOP showed interest in and was attentive to one of their people. Lee and I are their people, and it's a Harvard study, so I think it has merit. Culture has impact. I'll say it again. I don't want us to forget that. If we take nothing else, culture has impact. We have vital and we have urgent, y'all. I don't want us to miss this. Here's a key takeaway. We have vital in life and we have urgent. People are vital. Tasks are urgent. Say that out loud with me. People are vital. Tasks are urgent. I have to call this person back. That's urgent. I got to make this deadline. That's urgent. Time with my wife and my daughter, that's vital. Time with my teammates, building relationships, that's vital. Culture, therefore, is vital to the health of your organization. And it is the key to health and happiness of your people and ultimately you. So I said earlier, I wanted, if we had time, to make sure, and I'm going to check my time here, see how we're doing. We've got 15 more minutes. I wanted to cause a belief that it can have generational impact, even thousands of years. Enter the Spartans. So here's this picture, right? If you've seen the movie 300, it says what? Come back with your shield or on it. This is Leonidas's wife. He's going off to fight the Persian Empire. And she's like, hey, come back with your shield or come back on it, meaning you didn't make it. It's a great visual representation of the Spartan culture. So why does it matter today? You're like, hey, that's great. And it's a great movie. According to historians, had the Greeks, which the Spartans are Greek, lost, we may not have democracy as we know it. Hard stop. That's a big one. We might not have classical architecture, sculpture, theater, not as important to me, but democracy and the Olympic Games, we might not know those like we know those today had the Greeks lost. And the Spartans played a huge role in that. So why am I talking about the Spartans? Because they had a culture that was defined and implemented. The Spartans had a warrior culture, a military culture forged on obedience, discipline, and above all else, courage. Those were their core values. The warrior ethos in Sparta was cultivated by controlling the inputs. Remember I said controlling the inputs to my garden that I'm cultivating? Story, I told this at our team day. When males were born, the government came to visit it, and if they were sickly, they took them outside the city gates to leave them for dead. I made a joke. I wouldn't have made it back in Sparta. I was a sickly little kid. Thankfully, things have changed since then, but that's how they helped develop this warrior culture. If you were sickly and small, they took you outside the city gates. The way they trained young boys, they trained them to fight, to throw spears. They didn't give them much clothing, even in the winter. They made them hunt for their food. They could steal food, but if they were caught, they were beaten. So the core values, discipline, obedience, and culture, and the training and the inputs, that was crucial in the Greeks winning the war against the Persians. And the outcome is what we see today in democracy, Olympics, theater, architecture. So what, again, culture, y'all, has impact. Define or refine. Here we go. Figuring out what we want our culture to look like. I want y'all to think about it like this: internal and external culture. In your business, you've got both. Internal, think about your favorite lunch spot. If you could be a fly on the table at your favorite place, and you could hear one of your employees talking about how it feels to work for you, Chick-fil-A does this. How would you want them to feel working for you? I feel valued as a person over position. I feel like I can bring key ideas to management and they listen. I feel like I'm trained well. I feel like I know where the company is going and that my role plays a vital part in that. You get to define what the words that you want to come out of their mouth of how it feels to work for you. That's your internal culture. So write that down. Fly on the table. One of your employees is talking to a friend. What are some of the phrases that come out of their mouth? That's how you develop your internal culture. External culture, same example. You're a fly on the table. Favorite restaurant. You got a client talking to a buddy. How does it feel doing business with you? What are the key phrases, the buzzwords that come out of their mouth that you want to hear? Write those down, define those, articulate those. So what is the DNA that you want? What is your current culture? If you had to define it today, if you were to ask a team or send them a survey, a kind of a blind survey to your team, they could fill out a ton of and not get dinged for it. What would they say culture is today in your organization? If you were to survey your clients, what would their feedback be? What would they say? How would they define what your culture is? Read your Google reviews. See what they're saying. Take the good and the bad and take all those sentences that really help, that really hit home. Those are going to help you define and refine your culture. Bring it to your team. Let them be a part of it. Some of the best ideas and best insight will come from your team. And guess what? They'll feel valued if you bring them in. So what are you currently proud of? Share in the chat room. What are you proud of in your culture right now? What are things you do well? Maybe you do some things like the BBs do and send just a Venmo of $50 when they knew that we were in the mountains of Saluda. What are some of the things you're like, woof, man, we need to eliminate some things around here that aren't pushing the needle forward to cultivate the culture that we don't. Write these down. If we don't write them down, they're gone. They're gone. We're busy. So write them down. A truth and a warning example as we land the plane. Truth, progress is not linear. Can we stack hands on that? Culture, you may have an end goal and you're starting here. It's not linear. It'll go up and down and all around, and that's okay. Guess what? Life is like that. Progress in life and getting healthier and doing whatever. It's not linear. So have that proper expectation of what progress actually looks like. So, and it's still progress, right? Even if it's just one step forward, it's still progress. Do not try to do this all at once. You'll burn out. Maybe y'all can relate to this. I can go full throttle sometimes when there is something new to implement or improve, or if I've fallen off the wagon on a discipline that improves my life. You will burn out, trust me, if you try to do it all at once. I'll give you a tangible example. I was just at the gym this past weekend. We just got back from a team trip to Kentucky. We toured some bourbon distilleries. They serve bourbon there. I ate everything under the sun. And I came back and I went to the gym, and I'm trying to make up for these probably negative inputs that I put in all in one day. And I had to stop myself. I said, you're not going to make it all up in one day. You're just going to burn yourself out. So don't try to change culture all at once. Make a deposit each day. Might just be defining it. And then we can build some actual tools around how do you actually make sure that you cultivate it and it plays out. So here we go. Consistency. That is the main thing. Be consistent with it. Consistency over time, consistent deposits over time have a compound effect. So if we can be consistent in building the culture and making these deposits, we will win the day. So rank all these on a scale of 1 to 10. Here's where we get interactive. How important is attracting on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it's of utmost importance, 1 being I could care less. How important is attracting good people and keeping good people? I'll say it again. How important is attracting good people to your team and keeping them? 1 to 10. How important is enjoying your work and your life? That's kind of rhetorical, right? 1 through 10, rank them. Having some fun along the way, 1 through 10. It's okay to have fun at work, and it's okay to work hard, and all while really cultivating something that is impactful. How important is it for you to cultivate something impactful at your home and at work? Last question. How important is it for you to be healthier and happier? 1 to 10. Be honest with yourself. Don't answer 10 because you think you've got to answer a 10. Now, why were you what you put down? Why were you a 6? Why were you an 8? If you were a 6 or a 7, what would you need to change about your thought process to get to be an 8? To the extent that you believe culture can and will do all these things we just ranked, will be to the extent that you actually implement. I told you we had a culture calendar. This is how the BBs knew that I went to Saluda, and this is how they celebrated Lee and I. Here is a picture of our culture calendar. We are not perfect, but we are intentional about cultivating our culture. Like I mentioned earlier, we worked on this as a team just over the weekend in Kentucky. Where are we missing? What are we doing really good at? And it gives us an opportunity to continue to get better and refine our culture. If we miss something that we say is important to us, like we have an example, we get a new client, we want to send videos from the coaches. If we find out that we are dropping the ball there, guess what we do? Y'all know this if you're a client, we build a process around it so we don't miss those inputs, those deposits that we claim are valuable. So what here's some examples of what's on our culture calendar: birthdays, vacation, anniversary, kids, spouse, and spouses' birthdays, vision days. We do those throughout the year. Annual trip every third week in June. It's on our culture calendar. Team events, everything that we think is part of cultivating the culture that we want is on our culture calendar. And guess what? We review it every Tuesday. So here's one of the things. One of my favorite leaders that I've ever worked for, besides Scott Beebe, Steve Gardner, Regional Director for Young Life, an outreach ministry to high school kids. He said, what do you need to eliminate from your schedule in order to have margin for things that matter most? What do you need to currently eliminate? It could be just your mindset around culture. What do you need to eliminate so that you can add margin for things that are actually of high value? How are you going to impact culture weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually? Because culture has impact. Please remember, it is vital to define, to build out, to implement a culture in your home, just as it is at work. How do we get this done? We're going to wrap this up, land the plane, take some questions. I've got a worksheet. Jesse has access to the worksheet. If you want the worksheet, it's super simple. I got it right here. This will help you do the work to build out the culture if you think it's important. How do I actually get it done? So I just studied some brain science on this. Key fact: brain science shows us that if we do not, hear me out, identify, articulate, and act on the insights from today within the next hour, it is almost as if we never had the insight, the way our brains work, because we're busy. So if we don't identify, articulate, and act on the insights from today within an hour, it's gone. It's out the window. So, hey, we've cleared out 6 30-minute coaching calls that are free to you. You can ask the coaches whatever you like. We just ask you, if you sign up for one of these calls, time is a non-renewable resource. Show up. Let us know if you can't make it beforehand. Okay. But we have set aside some time to talk more and to help you build out culture, or we can just hear more about your business. You can go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/application. It will only take you a couple of minutes. It's a free 30-minute call. So that link should be in the chat window. Take the time to follow up on that, fill it out. What questions do we have around culture? What feedback? What are some wins that you've seen around culture? So let's dive into that now and just start sharing. Any questions? This is now the time that you can pick mine or Jesse's brain. Jesse, thanks for putting that in the chat. What was some of the biggest takeaways from today? Bueller. Heather, taking several screenshots. Love it. Progress. Doesn't it call us all out every time? Because I think progress should be like this, but having that clarity around what actually progress looks like is super helpful. People are vital. Tasks are urgent. Man, that's one that my mentors taught me years ago, and it has stuck with me because I can be a task-oriented person because of my DISC profile, my Enneagram profile. Yeah, and that progress isn't linear. That came from a brain scientist, so I'm just not pulling stuff off the web going, oh, this is a cool graph. Yeah, we'll definitely get you the worksheet. If you do it, it'll work. I've seen it work here with Business on Purpose. So,
Brent, I did want to say that consistency piece of like, even with the templates, even with the worksheets and all of these things, if we're not consistent with it, it doesn't matter. And being really generous with yourself and your team to say, we are going to miss things. This is new for us. We're always like, just as a culture in the West specifically, like, we are busy. We have a lot going on. And so even with something like a culture calendar, we're just going to miss things, and being able to be understanding and trust each other enough to say, all right, we're not missing this on purpose. We built this culture calendar to be a team, to help each other remember these things. Because I know Brent, he has mentioned several times, like, hey, I looked at the culture calendar this week. Kevin's about to go out of town. Let's do something for him. And it's just that being able to stack hands together for things like that is crucial for this actually working. It can't be on one person's shoulder. It has to be the whole team.
That's 100% correct. And I love that. And hey, it can be as simple as this. Kevin works for us. He's over in the Philippines. He was going away for 5 days. So we stacked hands on as a team that we're going to delay send all emails until he returned, because if he got an email, he was going to work. That's caring for your people. And like Jesse said, it's not on one person. We are collectively building the culture. And I was just reading this morning about showing people grace when we drop the ball. And I was reading about how mercy should triumph over justice. I'm one to go, hey, we didn't do it, justice. And I was talking about having mercy for folks and showing grace when we don't get it right or we drop the ball, but we're moving forward, right? Consistently making the inputs. Yeah, I love it. Work and home culture being established. I've seen people do it really well in their home, and their lives look different. Their families look different. And I've seen people just react to life and their lives look different. Kay is asking, will this recording be shared? Miss Jessie, what do you think?
Yeah. So tomorrow you guys will receive an email asking if you want a recording. We do that a day after just because we want to have time to get rid of some of the dead air in the beginning and give you guys a nice recording to be able to share with your team. So you'll get an email tomorrow. If you would like a recording, just reply back to me, say, yep, I want the recording or the worksheet. Or if you miss some screenshots, just let me know through that email and we can definitely get that to you.
Kim asking about books. Well, we will email you a list of 5 offhand, because one, Scott is probably the most avid reader that I've ever seen. I read consistently. Let me go back into my repertoire of books and determine what are my top 3 or 4 on culture, and we'll email those to you if that works. Kim.
This is not, and it will probably be in one of those 5, but we as a BOP team one of our values is learn and implement. And so part of that learning, we're actually reading through Unreasonable Hospitality right now. It is killer. It's not, well, Brent, I don't want to say it's not necessarily all about culture. It feels like it's all about culture and just how you treat people in your team. But I am not a reader. I'll tell you that right now. And I have a hard time putting that book down. So if it's not in the top 5 of culture books, I'm going to shove it in there.
Well, no, I think you're right. It's not specifically about culture, but it's how a guy took a restaurant in New York from not really on the map to number 1 in the world. And he did that by building a strong culture. And he talks about some of the specific inputs, even around team meetings, and how that formed a culture and a cohesion with a team that went out and changed that restaurant to become number 1 in the world. So Unreasonable Hospitality is a must read, regardless of industry. So drawing a blank on the author right now, but you can Google it. It's a great book. Anything else? Question. Goodera or something like that, Jesse. Any other questions? Anybody want to chime in while you got us before we close this session out? And I head to Charleston to go see Eric Church live. Pretty excited about that. All right. Well, if nothing else, we will let y'all go. And thank you, Liz. I plan on it. Been wanting to see this guy for a long time. So, hey, what's happening, Texas? How are you?
Hey, you want to talk about culture? Our air conditioner went out, and everyone's still here working.
That's awesome. Hey, I mean, Texas is hot. South Carolina is hot. I was sweating because I came in from the day, and I'm like, I can't stop sweating.
Us either.
So I was like, hey, if y'all are taking screenshots, I hope it's not of me, because you'll see.
No, it wasn't. I promise.
Sweaty Coach Brent, but I get fired up about culture. I get fired up about purpose, about mission, about vision of where you're going. And so, and I've seen the BBs just cultivated at home and at work, and it's tangibly different. And it's doable for everybody. That's the beauty.
Yeah.
It's doable for everybody. So my wife and I, we're actually working on our home core values and what we want our mission to be. We've got a 2-year-old, so it's a great time to start formulating and implementing those things. So yeah.
I love it. Hi, Jesse.
All right. Still 17 folks here. I mean, chime in, show us your faces. I mean, this is a time to, if you've got questions for some of the folks that have coached with us of some of the things that they have done, where they have seen impact with their team, with their clients, because culture affects your clients, the internal and external, like we talked about. And again, bringing clarity around it sometimes is the hardest part. And we can help with that. So that's why I would love to spend 30 minutes of going, hey, even if you just want to talk about your home culture, that's going to trickle over to your work, because those two just are integrated. You can't have a bad day at work and not take it home. You can't have a bad evening at home and not take it into work. That just, those necessarily intersect. Kenneth, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you.
Hey, I want to share what we're about to launch. I know you're not my coach, but you probably heard us talk about the sport. But sorry, I'm not trying to.
Oh, I'm your coach, because we talk about y'all every Monday at our coaches meeting. So I feel like I'm a coach for y'all as well. So
I wanted to add this year, actually put it on my notes last October, I think, or November, whenever we were in person, that I wanted to add something for financial literacy for our employees, because I feel like as owners, a lot of times that's what makes us different, is we've either made it here kind of, well, some people by mistake, or we've had someone in our path that has taught us about it. You know, I have a lot of real estate investing background. And so I want our employees to have more than just a Friday paycheck, especially one that's already used on Thursday before they even get paid on Friday. So it's a big thing for us. We've been looking for the right kind of tool to do that. And so I finally found one. We're going to roll it out. Hands, that's coming up in 2 weeks. So Dave Ramsey has a program, and they have one for employers to roll out to employees, and it comes with free coaching. It helps them do their taxes.
That's awesome.
It helps them organize their money. Like, they can put their account into an app, and then we use Augusto for our payroll system, and they have the multi-bank accounts. That was a big thing for me when we moved to them, so that our employees can actually automatically have a certain amount go to savings, or they can have up to, I think, 7 bank accounts, so their paycheck can spread. So how do we get everyone on the same path? And then it's really interesting, because we're ready to, it's something we've been talking about on the leadership level, trying to find the right program. And we finally found it. It's like $2,000 or $3,000 a year. It's an investment, but it's up to 25 employees, so it covers all of our people. And then they all have these resources. So whether I have guys that have kids going to college, I have people having newborns, and I have single people who are looking up to the guys who have kids going to college.
Sure.
It will sit with them in every way that they're at. And so we're starting to do the 12-week plans, and 2 of them already have said they want to have more awareness about money. They want a budget, but they really don't know where to start. So it's kind of perfect in its timing. But anyways, that was a big goal of mine. I think we shared. It was October, because that was that week where we met with you guys like every day. It's something I'm passionate about. Like, how do we make them better? How do we help our employees be everything they want to be, and not just be 8 to 5?
Yeah, that's generational change for some people.
Yeah.
I mean, think about one. All right, so you think selfishly about stickiness. Those people are going to be loyal, right? And want to go shoulder to shoulder with you, but they also can make generational change and not live paycheck to paycheck and always be in the red. We had a landscaping company do just that, because the owner was at Publix, and she saw like 6 or 7 of her employees cashing their checks there. And they determined it was costing them like 1 or 2 paychecks a year over time to cash their paychecks there, because they didn't have a bank account. They didn't know how to set one up. They didn't have access. They brought in that financial literacy component, generational change. So those employees got a raise just by being educated, and for an owner to intentionally say, hey, there's a problem, I can step in and I can solve that. And I can change people generationally, and I can also create stickiness. where folks
Yeah.
want to work for us. And so that's awesome. I hope y'all are hearing that if you're still on the call. Like, think about the impact that you can have culturally with financial literacy, because that does not come easy to everybody. If you're not taught that, it's really hard just to figure it out. It's very scary.
Well, and a lot of the
That's
time,
awesome.
I think, especially as owners, it's really easy to think that can't possibly be my job. My job is not to educate my team members on financial literacy. Like, I need to know that for the business, and that's about it. But as business owners, our job is the business and our team. And so if our people are constantly struggling financially, it's going to cause discord. Like Brent said, the personal and work, they intersect all the time. And so we have to stop looking at things like that of, well, my team members' personal lives are none of my business, and that's not my job. Because at the end of the day, it is like, business is not just business. It never was, even when that was a saying. Like, that
It is absolutely
matters.
our job.
Right.
It is 100% our job as business owners, and to empower them. And not only that, is we have the responsibility to make an environment for them that's safe and healthy. And so how do we do that if they're bringing all their stress home from work, or vice versa? And so I can't change their home life, but what we can do is create a safe place where they know that they, if I'm looking into them to, how can I be better for you? Sitting down with them, reviewing their 12-week plan when we do their check-in, they're not going to leave for $1, number one. And also, if they're having a real hard time, because mental health is a big thing in the construction industry, we're the first people they're probably going to talk to, which is a big piece of caring about your people, right? And that's, we're in construction. If I have somebody that's over the top stressed, having issues at home or financial issues, guys, that is a safety risk for us.
Yeah.
Someone else
No,
could get
100%.
hurt because we didn't care on the little things. And so it is absolutely our job.
Yep.
Well, and here's the other thing. If you go back to that Harvard study on adult development, 85 years ongoing study, showing interest in and being attentive to your people leads to health and happiness. Well, there's a selfish aspect. I want to show interest in and being attentive to, because I want to be healthy and happy. And I want to teach them how to show interest in and be attentive to their people. And that's why culture, when I keep saying culture has impact, because I think we miss it, and I think we gloss over it, and we think it's entertainment, and it's not what culture is. It's not Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson riding their bikes at the Google place, which was an awesome movie, by the way. Like, oh yes, it's a ton of fun. So, does anybody else got anything they want to share that may be still in the waiting room, the chat room, that want to share that's been impactful that they've seen implemented within an organization they have worked for or currently? All right. Well, Miss Jessie, I think we can land the plane. All right, Texas. I hope y'all get y'all's AC going. I'll be back out. I think I'll be out in Austin here soon for the expo. So maybe this time we won't get iced over. Focus on the big picture. Yeah, Sebastian, I love it. Yeah, you're more than welcome. Thanks for tuning in with us. So, culture has impact. All right, ladies, y'all have a good one. Jessie, thanks for co-hosting.
You know it. Bye, y'all.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.